Welcome to the Susan Brender Show. It's all about you, featuring shows on health and wellness, the performing arts, politics, and people who inspire you to be your best. And now, here's Susan Brender.
I'm Susan Brender, and this is the Susan Brender Show. Today, my guest is Lori-Ann Davis, who is a relationship specialist, speaker, author, and radio host. I want to welcome to my show Lori Davis.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here with you today.
You know, Lori, you have had a unique and passionate approach to love and relationships. Tell our audience all about that.
Well, it's a combination, I think, of my career and my personal life. I got my master's in clinical psychology about 28 years ago and have been working with people ever since. But really, so I've always been passionate about helping people. But the whole idea of wanting to create the book that I created and the programs that I do and the clients that I work with has come from my own personal life. I had a absolutely wonderful 25-year marriage. We were that couple that everybody looked at and said, I want to be like them. You know, we just were so in love for 25 years. And, you know, unfortunately, sometimes in life, we do go through changes, and we sort of grew in some different directions. And after 28 years, we decided to go our separate ways. And through that whole experience for me, as you can guess, it was a very tough time for me. We had been together for a very long time. I had thought we would always be together. But when I came out of that and, you know, kind of did my healing and started looking at, I wanted to create another amazing relationship. I still had 2 young children, and I wanted them to grow up seeing what a great relationship looks like. And so I started looking at what did I do with clients, but more importantly, what had I done myself that allowed me to have that long-term relationship? What were those secrets? And through that self-discovery, and a couple of things happened. One is I really decided that was my niche. That was the clients I wanted to work with. I wanted to work with people that were single again, who were trying to figure this whole thing out of how to find the right partner. And I wanted to work with people who weren't as happy as they wanted to be and were frustrated in their relationships. And so that narrowed down my niche of who I was passionate about working with. And it also led me to writing the book that I published late this spring called Unmasking Secrets to Unstoppable Relationships, because I realized that I knew how to do this, and I had done it, and I am now doing it again with a second relationship, and I'm passionate about helping others because everybody deserves to be that happy in their relationships.
Yes, and your practice spans the spectrum from dating and singles to working through divorce to renewing long-term marriages. Is that important for what you do?
It is. It's very important. Like I said, it's the people that I am most passionate about helping. I've done all sorts of things in my careers, from family counseling to being a clinical supervisor for a big outpatient office, but at least at this point in my life, my passion really is helping people to find that relationship. When I became single after 28 years of marriage, wow, the idea of dating just scared the heck out of me.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know? Like, how do I do this? It's changed so much. And so I went through my own growth and learning process and was very successful at finding, you know, the second love of my life. We are now almost 4 years into that relationship. But I started meeting all of these people who were so frustrated, and they were giving up. And I thought, that doesn't have to be the case. If I did this, you know, and I learned how to do it, they can do it too. They want a counselor, right, who did all this research when they became single. So I thought they're just lacking the information, the knowledge that they need, and maybe somebody to guide them through the process. So I started working with singles, and I've always wanted to work with couples because couples and relationships, that's how we raise our children. That's how we're raising the next generation.
Yeah.
And I was very blessed to have been raised by wonderful grandparents who demonstrated for me what an amazing relationship looked like. And so I think that was the beginning of my learning process. But not everybody is that lucky either. So there are so many people out there who aren't happy in their marriages, in their relationships. And so many of them seem to think that that's just the way it is, that it doesn't get any better than that. Relationships start off great, they sort of hit that stale stage, and people just get stuck there, and they think that that's all there is. And so I want to help people learn that that's not the case, that there really are. My book is all about, and my practice is all about teaching you simple things that you can do on a daily basis that really can create the kind of relationship you want. It's just that people don't teach us that generally, and we don't know how to do it. So I want to be the one that ends that frustration for people, that teaches them the skills, the tips that they need to know in order to create the relationships that they want.
So in addition to workshops, classes, couples retreats, and local singles group, you have a talk show called The Real Talk with Lori Davis on Ivybe
Radio. Yeah, it doesn't look like it, but it's Ivybe Radio. I do. Was lucky enough. I had a half-an-hour show before, and recently in July was offered an hour radio show on a bigger platform, and I'm very blessed about that because I get to come on every Monday night at 6 o'clock, and I bring on guests, and we spend an hour really delving into a specific relationship topic and trying to give people lots of help to help them create better relationships.
Now, when you interview people, what are some of the questions that you ask them?
We did a show recently on life after divorce and how to date as a single parent. So we talked all about recovering from divorce. We talked about specifics about how to manage dating as a single parent. I have talked about, I had a gentleman on one day, and we talked all about, from a man's perspective, how to be a good partner. He had gone through numerous marriages and was a coach now and had a successful relationship. So we just delve into whatever topic it is, and we called it Real Talk because it's real-life issues, and we are giving you real-life advice. I am all about trying to keep things as simple as I can and as practical as I can to really give you the information you need to make changes in your life, positive changes in your life.
Now, if you were to actually ask those questions and talk to people and tell them and give them advice, let's talk a little bit about that. Just pretend for a moment that you were talking to me. And I'm very fortunate. I don't have that problem. I've been married for 42 years, but yes, and it's great. But if I was single and started dating after a long time, what would you talk to me about?
I would talk to you first about being ready to date. There are so many singles out there who, because of past relationships, because of failed dating attempts, have really developed some thought patterns, some beliefs that get in their way of finding the right person. They've got some negative attitudes, some negative beliefs. So they're going out there and really they can't attract the right person because they're not in the right space themselves. So that's always the first place to start is, how are you showing up? And what work do you need to do on yourself? And then we talk about what it is that you really, truly need from a relationship. So many people have this laundry list of all the things that they want. And a lot of those things are superficial. They're exterior things. So I help them to narrow down, what are those core values? It's the foundation that you're going to build your relationship on. Because once you get that foundation and you understand not what person you're looking for, but what kind of relationship are you looking for, then what happens is it really opens up the world to how many people might fit that criteria. So all of a sudden, you have people that look very different maybe than you would have considered before. as people that you could date. And so it gives you a much broader range of who to go out and look for. But it also means that when you pick someone, you're going to pick someone that you have a strong foundation with to build that relationship on.
Yeah.
So those are some of the really important things. And then one more that I think is so important, and I talk about this a lot in the book. I talk about this with singles and with couples, is that, women went through a lot of changes in the 60s and the 70s. Our role in society changed, and we expanded our role, which was wonderful. I am all for women having equal rights and getting out in the world and doing all the things they want to do. What happened was when we did that is we took on a lot of masculine characteristics because we had to. So we're out there doing and accomplishing and being in the man's world. What happens, though, is that nobody taught us how to balance that with our relationships. And so when I speak with women and I speak with men, what's happening is it's making it difficult sometimes for men and women to date, and it's also making it difficult in their marriages. Is women approach dating and approach marriage sometimes with that same masculine energy, and that doesn't work, right? Men aren't attracted to that, and women get exhausted from being in that. So I work with women a lot on balancing that feminine energy and getting that back so that when they're dating, we talk specifically about how to approach dating and how to approach their relationship in that feminine energy mode and balancing that in their lives. It's good for them. It's good for their relationships. And so we talk about how to do that so that they can actually attract the right partner and keep them.
Now, you see, one of the things that I always think about is that it's really a man's world, and women have it much tougher. Now, has that been your experience?
They do, because, men go out into the work world with that masculine energy, that accomplishing, that doing, wanting to, task-driven. And so that works at work. It also kind of works at home. I mean, they have to change the way they do it a little, but they're still in that masculine energy at home. Women go out during the day, and like I said, they've had to learn to, at their core, most women have more feminine energy. And so they've had to learn how to embrace and live in that man's world, like you said. Mm-hmm. But then when they come home, they have to switch gears. They have to sort of take off that masculine energy hat, put on the feminine energy, and really change their focus. And so they've got double duty sort of to do, and they can do it, and it really doesn't have to be that difficult once they know how. And in the book, I've got, lots and lots of examples of suggestions about how to do it and why you want to do that, why it's going to make your husband or your partner a happier partner. And then they're going to give you what you want and you need out of the relationship. So both partners are going to be happy. But yes, women have to make that change that men don't have to make. So it is more difficult for them.
Lori, I want people, of course, to read your book, but I would love for you to give them some tips. Just a few, if you don't mind.
Oh, no, I'd love to. One of the things I like to tell women to do is when and this is even if you're a stay-at-home mom, there was a time when I only worked on the weekends and I was home during the week with my children. So, you know what? You're still in that masculine energy when you're taking care of children. You're still doing and accomplishing. You have to do the same thing. So when you know that you're either driving home from work or, you're getting ready to sort of transition from your day to your husband coming home, what do you need to do? You need to do something to make yourself kind of let go of all of that stress from the day. Feminine energy really isn't about accomplishing. It's more about just being. It's about that intuition. It's about feelings. It's about being calmer and more centered. So that's good for you. So what can you do at the end of the day to do that? If you're driving home from work, you can put on some music maybe that makes you feel softer, more feminine. You can, if you're home, you can go get a shower. Maybe you can change your clothes. I kind of laugh and say, if you're home with little kids, you can pull the Cheerios out of your hair. You can get the applesauce off your clothes. You can, we don't need to go back to the 50s. You don't need a dress and high heels, but maybe just freshening up a little. When women get home, when they've finished dinner and dishes, and maybe go get a hot shower or take a warm bath, or you could play music again that you like. You could light candles. You can, all of those softer things that we think of as more feminine, you can give yourself the gift of spending just a little bit of time tuning back in to being more feminine, that softer side of yourself. And that is relaxing for you. It's rejuvenating for you so that then later, the next day, you have more energy. Reading a book maybe. Romance novels can come in handy for that. Run a hot bath and read a chapter in a romance novel. And all of a sudden, all of that work stress is gone and you're feeling feminine. And maybe you're feeling more in the mood to snuggle with your guy, to have some physical contact with them, so that you are tapping back into that part of yourself that is ultimately feminine. Does that make sense?
Oh, it sure does. And I'm going to switch gears for a moment and talk a little bit about you. First, I'd like our audience to know about your background. What made you get involved in this? There must have been something that sort of stimulated or motivated you to write this book, to talk about relationships. So just tell our audience just a little bit about your background.
Sure. Well, I've always had a passion for helping people. I went into college thinking I was going to be a lawyer, and fell in love with psychology classes. I actually worked for my psychology professor, and within the first year, I think, changed my degree. And then out of grad school, just absolutely loved working with people. So I've always had that passion. And then and so I was doing it on a part-time basis while I was raising, my older daughter. And when I decided to start a private practice again in a new state, new town, and I needed to look at what I wanted my focus to be. Like I said, it was the relationship I had with my first husband was so amazing and so wonderful that I thought, you know what? This is what God has called me to do. This is my passion. How many people out there are living in relationships that they are not happy with? They're not happy, not because they're not capable, not because they don't want it, because either they don't believe it's possible or they don't have the skills. And so I started writing blogs in addition to working with clients. And a girlfriend and I, we were sitting around the table having coffee one morning, and she has a background in editing, copywriting. She said to me, you ought to turn all these blogs that you're writing into a book. And at first I thought, a book? I'm not an author, But I started looking at it, and she said, let's just play around with it. So I started coming up with outlines and trying to put chapters together. And, honestly, before very long I realized that I had an amazing message to give, and that's what I was called to do. So we put this book together. I found a publisher who published it for me, and now I am so excited to let people know that I have clients sometimes who will say to me, I wish you were sitting on my shoulder telling me these things when I'm not in session with you. And I thought, well, that's what my book does. It's as if you were sitting there over a cup of coffee with me. It's a very simple, easy-to-read book. I wrote it as if I was a loving parent or a loving friend, sort of guiding you along. And that's how I see it, is I'm there to help you and guide you and give you simple things that you can do on a day-to-day basis that maybe you haven't thought about doing or maybe you forgot to do, to sort of guide you. So that's what I want to be to people, that simple friend, that wise elder maybe. I guess I'm almost old enough to be a wise elder, helping them to have better relationships. And I just can't think of a better legacy to leave for my children, for myself, than to do that for people.
Well, that sounds very, very special, that the fact that you really want to help people. And it sounds like you also want to build a community, because there are so many people who just are so alone, and no matter what they do, they feel so lonely. But again, I want to stick to you for the moment, and I want to ask you, you must have some hobbies that you can do that are a little separate from your work, and would you tell our guests again about you and your hobbies, how you got started? Tell us all about that.
Well, one interesting thing is I have a crazy life. I love my crazy life. It is very free-flowing. I still have 2 young children. I have one that's 8 and one that will be 11 soon. I have one daughter that's grown, but I homeschool my young children. So I am balancing, a career working out of my home with homeschooling my children. And so we have a very free-flowing day. They're downstairs right now, and they've left them an assignment while I talk to you. I will check on them. I will pick up a client later this afternoon. So my life is very free-flowing, and I think that works for me. That's sort of my personality. When I manage free time around all these other things, I like to garden. I like to sew. I like to cook. I like to travel with my children. So one of my burning desires actually is I've got a couple of conferences lined up this year that I will be speaking at. My goal is to really increase that. I would like to get into bigger conferences. I would like to do bigger weekend retreats and I'd like to travel with that. I'd like to pick up my children, pack up their schoolwork, go places and help people and have experiences in different places with my children.
Oh, that's really wonderful. And so, again, what is your practice method? It must be something different than a lot of other people use. So tell us.
It is. When I work with, for one thing, I do most of my sessions over the phone or through Skype, so I can work with people, and maybe that's not, in this day and age, that's not that unusual. Back when I was a therapist in an office, when I was running a counseling office, that was sort of unheard of, So that allows me to meet clients' needs because I'm home, I really can stop for a little while. So when somebody texts me and says, I'm having a crisis, something didn't go well on a date, can we get in an extra session? I also allow people to email me or text me, and I will answer them back. So I'm pretty free-flowing about that as well and meeting my clients' needs. I don't take on so many clients that I can't do that. The other thing that I do different is when I work with couples specifically, I don't work with them together, at least not right away. I believe that one person really can change their relationship, and I have built my practice around that, wrote the book around that if I help you to understand what you need and what you want out of a relationship, and I can help you understand what your partner needs and wants, that, frequently only one person is really willing to get some help in a relationship. So if that one person comes to me, we're going to work on making them the best partner they can be. And what happens is when you start meeting your partner's needs and you show up different, all of a sudden your partner's feeling fabulous and wonderful. So you start to then, sort of as a byproduct, get what you want and what you need out of the relationship. And maybe when you need to negotiate some things with them, we teach you how to do that, so that I really give one person the power to create the relationship that they want. Now, if their partner is willing to come in and work on it with them, that's wonderful. We will do that. But so many times that's not the case. And so I've given women, usually it's women, but actually I have some men who call, and they're the ones that want to come in and their wives don't. So if the relationship is salvageable, we can do it a lot of times with one person. And I think that's very different than traditional marriage counseling, but I have found it to be very powerful.
So, Lori, you're doing so much with all the things that you've mentioned, and I want to know a little bit about your future goals.
Okay. My future goals are, I have started a second book. So my future goal is to eventually get the second book written. Somehow I have this feeling it's going to take me longer than the first because I'm busy marketing the first one. But I have started a book. The first one I wrote predominantly for women. So now I have started a counterpart, a book for men, helping them to understand what women want and what women need out of relationships, and keeping it very, very simple for them, and sort of giving them almost like bullet point list of things they can do. So I'm working on that. I am working on building this new radio show. It's going really well. So my goal is to continue to grow my listenership with that. And like I mentioned earlier, I want to start traveling to do more conferences, and I have actually found a partner who is asking me to do weekend retreats. So we want to work with singles and do these weekend retreats to really teach singles how to connect with each other again. In addition to that, I have started a singles group. Not everybody wants to work with you individually. Not everybody, honestly, can afford to work with a coach on an individual basis. So September 22nd is my first launch of a group 6-week group course that I'm going to be running, so that people who would prefer the group method or can afford that but can't afford individual, I can still take them through 6 weeks of really getting them solid with learning how to date and how to find that right person. So I'm excited about that. That's something new for me, to turn that into a group course that we can do, over the phone. So again, people could live anywhere and participate in that. So those are some of my goals.
And you say that people can live anywhere and be part of this wonderful sounding workshop. How do they do that? Is it by phone, or is it on?
It's by phone. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So explain to me a couple of things that you probably would do on the phone with this particular workshop.
With the singles, the class is called Secrets to Successful Dating, and it's on my website. We're going to take 6 weeks. There's exercises that we will go over. We're going to we talked about earlier, we're going to talk about, are you ready to date, and what do you need to do to be ready to attract that right person? I think that was the secret for me to finding someone so fast, is that I had really done all the groundwork. When I got out there looking, I had no idea how long it would take me, but I was ready and I was very clear. And really within a matter of weeks of starting to date again, once I was ready, I had done a little of that, preliminary dating. You stick your toe in the water, but you're really not ready to find somebody.
Right.
But once I was ready, I met Dave within a couple of weeks. So looking about being ready, and then helping you to figure out what really are your requirements and your needs, so that you know how to go out and find, when you found the right person. We'll talk about some differences between men and women when you're dating, so that you know how to date. We're going to help you to be the cream of the crop in dating, so that when you go on that date, that other person's going to go, wow, I haven't met anybody like you. And then we'll talk about some, overcoming some obstacles and some of the secrets to happiness in relationship.
Well, I know it's very wonderful that you're doing that, but what can men do to be successful with women? We're going back to that first subject because it's important for our audience to know about that.
It is. Men need to learn a little bit about women, because women confuse them. They do. And so there are a few, we don't have a lot of time, so I'll give you just a couple of tips for them. One of the things they need to understand is that even though times have changed and women are, modern women, guys, they still want to be pursued. So they still want you to text them, call them, pursue them. They want to know that you're interested, and they get really excited when there's maybe a connection and they like you, and you continue to pursue them. Don't wait for them to do it. You be the one to reach out to them and ask them for that next date. When Dave and I started dating, one of the first things that really impressed me was that shortly after that first date, or in each one in the beginning, he had made a date for the next weekend right away. So I knew he was interested, and that made me more interested. Another thing that men can know about women is that we like little things. We like to know that you like us, that you're interested in us. So sending, in the beginning, it can be phone calls, but, modern technology can really help in this. Sending her a little text after the date that says, really enjoyed our date, can't wait to the next one. Or a simple text after you've dated maybe a couple of times that says, good morning, I hope you have a wonderful day. Just little things like that on a daily basis can really mean a lot to letting her know you're interested and that you like her. And it doesn't take a lot of time. It doesn't take a lot of effort. It's not complicated. And maybe holding off just a little bit on being overly assertive with the physical contact. I wrote a blog one time about the first kiss and how important the first kiss was and how the first kiss could make or break the beginning of a relationship. Mm-hmm. And it actually got a lot of views. It got a lot of likes. And I talked about, women are kissing, collecting information. So guys need to be a little bit more subdued, a little calmer. She wants to know you're interested, but let's not be too assertive about it, too aggressive about it. Let her take the lead, sort of. When I do big singles events and I talk to lots of men and women are turned off a lot of times when men are they're pushing them too much, to have too much sexual contact too soon. So for guys, if you're dating, allow her to sort of take the lead in that. Let her know you're interested, that you like her, but follow her lead when it comes to that, so that she doesn't think that that's the only reason you're interested in her.
Yeah, that's very good advice. And, I have to tell you, I have to kind of challenge you a little bit here, because don't you think that one of the things that is going on in the world today is that so many people are on their text messaging, they're on the computer, and that's also, kind of keeping them apart from building relationships. So yes. You just said that maybe you ought to text message, a little kind of, how are you doing today? But wouldn't it be better if they spoke on the phone or in person?
It definitely would. I think that text messaging can, and different people have different opinions about this, so this is only my opinion, but I think that it can be something. You may not be able to call them in the morning. They might not be able to take your call on their way to work. So it's a way to sort of add a little smile to their face during the day, but it can't take the place. I love that you brought this up. It can't take the place of that phone call. It can't take the place of a meeting. When I'm talking to singles, and especially if they're doing like the online dating thing, I always say one or two emails, back and forth maybe to share, to find out if you're interested. But really, I don't want you to have too much email contact or text contact before you have a phone call. The phone call needs to come pretty soon, because you can learn so much about that person in that phone call to decide if you want to see them or not. And so I always encourage people not to have a whole lot of email or texting conversation before they have a phone call. And again, once you've had that phone call and you think you're interested, then you need to pick a time to meet. So I think it's after you've met, it can be a way to sort of solidify the date. So on the way home, you've had your date. It can be just a way of letting the other person know that you really enjoyed it. It can be a way to plan a date. You could send a text to say, is such and such restaurant okay? But that's it. No long conversations. It's really about sharing brief little pieces of information, or maybe even sending a text to say, if you've dated a few times, I miss the sound of your voice. Can you talk right now? Yeah. It's sort of a little added thing I think you can do. But yes, you definitely want that personal contact. As a matter of fact, the gentleman that I'm talking about doing these weekend events with for singles, we're going to make people check their cell phones at the beginning of the event, and we will give it back to them in the evening, to check in with their children. But we really do want to take them away from technology and teach them how to reconnect with each other. So I think that there's a place for both, as long as you know how to use it.
Well, Lori, You've been a wonderful guest today, and I want our audience to know that Lori Davis has a unique and passionate approach to love and relationships and believes that everyone deserves and can have the relationship of their dreams. So thank you so much for being on my podcast, Lori Ann Davis. You've been a wonderful guest.
Oh, thank you. It was my pleasure to be here.
Thank you for listening to The Susan Brender Show.